Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. You know, sometimes in my opening, I say, why am I really here? And what purpose do I have? And those sorts of things. And there are people that I've talked to that say, okay, I don't know. Do you know? I say, no. And then we say, how can I find out? And then we say, well, you know, you might think about seeing a hypnotherapist and going to past lives, or I know, how about a astrologer? Somebody, somebody
Pick me.
pick me. It's somebody who they can really read your chart, and they can kind of get an idea of from where you come from, why the stars were aligned the way they were when you were born, and is it pre-done? Is it something that you that you planned before you got here, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really it's a nice. You're adorable, by the way. By the way, we're talking with Tammeron
Karaim.
Gotcha.
That's me.
I have a terrible time with last names. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. And welcome here. Welcome to the show. You're an astrologer of note. You also help women deal with problems that they have with relationships and that kind of stuff. And you use your gift of astrology to help people get through all of those things. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started doing this?
Oh, Kevin, thank you so much. And if this is live on video, I'm just a little excited, and it's warm here, so I'm having a bit of a hot flash, so my face will calm down. But, and I get excited. So, hey, when you talk astrology, I do get excited. So, yes, I am a certified astrologer. And to be honest, I have studied a lot of different healing modalities over the years. I'm actually now 60. So I've been in this self-help industry.
Be still, my foolish heart. You are not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
I know I don't look it, but some days I wake up and I feel it.
One of these days we'll have to talk about that. It's like, damn.
It's crickety. It's crickety in the morning sometimes, especially in the winter when it's cold.
And sometimes it just doesn't work as well. Anyway, go ahead.
I hear you. Yes, so it's true. But I've studied a lot of different things, and really what made a huge difference for me was the onset of COVID, when I had this intuitive download that I had to become a certified astrologer. And I find it interesting how I was dealing with repetitive patterns of betrayal in my life. And it wasn't just in my personal life. It was showing up in my business relationships as well. And it was kind of stumping me. And I was kind of asking those questions like, why does this keep happening? And when I became an astrologer and became a student of astrology, one of the perks was you don't study someone else's chart. You study your own chart first. That's at least the school I was in. So as I was learning how to uncover the signatures of some very specific planets, and some of the main key planets we talk about in astrology do connect with your purpose and why you're here and why we repeat patterns to learn these soul lessons. And that's when I got that big aha moment, Kevin. And I was like, okay, my hair stood up. It was like all the years of therapy that I've been in and out of, which I think is a good thing. I don't consider therapy as a negative experience. For many people, therapy is a wonderful tool, especially for people like us who love to talk. We need the audience. We need the other person. We need the reflection. I was like, it made my entire life make sense. Like why I was in the family dynamics, why I had certain strengths, why I had weaknesses, why I was repeating certain patterns to give me the lessons that I needed so that my soul could evolve and grow as a human being. Now, if anybody's listening, does that make sense? Because I honestly don't believe that we are just here to buy stuff and die. No, I'm sorry. It's not about the stuff. It's about how we grow and evolve. And so life is going to give us challenges. And so as I began to understand my own chart, those challenges in my life gave me so much meaning. And I just felt like I understood why I was here more, and it was extremely validating for me. So, of course, once I was able to do that and understand that, then I was ready to practice on other people. And then, of course, now offer that. And what I did is I took that pattern of betrayal as what it is that I want to empower other people, especially women, to help them understand why that keeps happening, their own lessons that they're here to learn, and how they can recover from it. Because the solutions and the holistic remedies are also solutions that are in your birth chart. So I'm also a certified health coach, and I've been a health coach now for 25 years or something, some ridiculous things. So all those keys and secrets are actually in your chart. And so that's what I love to study, and then pass that knowledge down to my clients and support them.
Now, when you were studying your own chart, did certain things come to light that you were like, oh my, I had no earthly idea, but that is so true for me? Did that
Yes,
come up?
Kevin, many, many times, because I'll give everybody a quick little bit of an astrology educational piece here. We have different planets in the solar system that when what we cast a chart, meaning we go to a specific website, and there's some very common ones that most astrologers use, and we put in your information of the data. So we put in your birth name, we put in where you were born, and if we know the time and the date. Now, if you don't know the exact time, it's okay. You can still what we cast a chart. It's just that we won't be able to get very specific information about your astrology. But where the planets were, the main planets, the main 9 planets were, the minute you took your first breath, is a picture of what was happening in the sky. So of those 9 planets, some of them are what we call personal planets, meaning they're the planets that are closest to the Earth, and we can see them with the naked eye. So that's the planet of Venus and Mars and Mercury and Saturn and Jupiter. And of course, we can see the moon, because the moon is the closest. And the moon zips around, like we all learned in school. It zips around the Earth every 28 days. So where those planets were the minute you took your first breath is the story of your soul's journey. And that includes why you were here. Your Mercury is where Mercury was, talks about how you communicate, how your brain works, how you think of something and you communicate it. And because there's 12 astrological signs in the sky of the horoscopes, meaning Aries, Taurus, Gemini, 12 of those, if one of those planets was in one of those astrological signs, it means something different. So it's going to mean something different for your Mercury, for Venus, what you need to feel loved and how to express love. Mars is your courage, how you take action, whether that's in your business or even like in your sexual energy, like how you make that action happen. And then you have Saturn, which is your life lessons, like where you're going to get your butt kicked over and over in life until you finally get the lesson, right? And that can happen every 7 years, depending, because Saturn takes 28 to 30 years to go around the Earth. So every 7 years, it's kind of like that theme of it's happening. So either you get the nugget or you don't. And if you don't, guess what? You're going to repeat it. And then Jupiter is the planet that people love, because Jupiter is where we have luck, we have optimism, we have a sense of joy, opportunities, but it also represents our spirituality and how we are evolving on a spiritual lesson. So an astrologer is usually going to talk about either one of those major planets, a combination of those planets. Some people do predictions. Some people like me like to talk about your personality, why you've repeated patterns in your relationships, and how you can overcome it. And because I kept dealing with betrayal, because that was my soul's lesson, was to become the victor and to not be a victim, I had to keep repeating that until I finally realized, wait a minute, other people's stuff has nothing to do with me.
So let me see if I can, because there's somebody out there who's going to say, all right, now wait a minute. You're telling me that it's based upon how the stars are and stuff. And so it's not happenstance. It is a planned event when you are born. And so consequently, that tells me, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you're on the other side preparing for this life, not only are you going to be talking with the people that you're going to meet, the family
Yeah.
members you're going to have, who's going to be your mom and dad, who's going to be doing this and stuff. And then all of that has to play into it's got to be really
Your
complicated.
soul cloud, it all comes together on that journey. That's how I look at it, is these people are going to come in your life because they agreed, like Carolyn Miss talks about. If anybody listens to Carolyn Miss, she talks about your soul cloud, the people that your soul has agreed to come into this lifetime so that you can all evolve and grow together, because it's never just about you.
But it's all got to be timed to
Yeah.
coincide with where the planets are at any given time for the moment of your birth, so that you know, and they know ahead of time. It's like, okay, like my mom's name was Elaine. It's like, okay, Elaine, push. And when she had, so she had to push right at the right time for me to be born at the right time, to be exact, and they got that all planned. Is that right?
I look at it as the other way, is like it's a planned journey based on when you came out. So it gets, your soul's journey is activated based on what's happening. Not your soul was agreed to do it that way, but you come here with the agreement that your soul is here to evolve and learn. So that's why people that are born at the same time, they may have been born in a different place. So if you were to look at the sky from, say, Canada on this moment right now, and then somebody's looking at the sky in Australia, well, your astrology birth chart is going to be very different. The planets are going to be in the correct placement in the sky, but the housing system of where they show up and what areas of your life are going to be activated are very different. And even twins that are born at minutes apart, their birth chart is different.
And so basically you're born, and then your chart is kind of imprinted into what's going to be happening with you, and the experiences that you're going to have throughout your life that you have already determined. Like if you have
They
problems with
were,
forgiveness,
yeah,
you,
they were determined by the stars. You didn't determine it, the stars determined it.
so it can, even for the soul, it can be kind of like, surprise, guess what you get to do this time.
Yeah. And even in astrology, whether people believe it or not, if you believe in past lives, which I do, your past life is a certain signature in your astrological birth chart. And there's an indication in that your soul is continuing to evolve based on where you left off in your previous lifetime. Like you're still growing. So there are still things that earthly lessons you're still here to learn. Like I love that quote by Stephen Covey, is that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that makes more sense to me as an astrologer. It's like you're here to grow.
You know what's interesting about that is there are so many people that say the same dang thing all the time. As a matter of fact, are you familiar with John Edward,
Yeah,
the
I
psychic?
love John Edwards. I love him. I've read a few of his books, and I love him too because he always says, "Don't come to me. Go to an astrologer." And he's still doing a lot of promotional interviews and stuff now because he's touring, right? And he
Oh
says
yeah.
that all the time. Like
Well,
astrology is perfected.
and one of the things that he says is that our body is like a car. If
Yeah,
you remember, like I remember my first car was a Fury 3 Plymouth 1967 with a 383 in the underneath the hood. Well, I sold that and it's no longer part of my existence. It's
right.
gone. And so it's like the same thing happens to us. We don't go away, but if our car, ergo our body, doesn't work anymore, then we continue on and we get another car.
Yeah. Our soul experiences another existence here. So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And
Because how do we come into this lifetime, even sometimes just knowing stuff? How do we explain that?
you can't. You can't. Well, the other thing is that when you look at it like that, then that means that there is no death. Because what
Yeah.
you're doing is it's a continuous continuum of you're here, and then that body doesn't work anymore, so you go home, you get refreshed, and you get a new idea, and then you come back again, you get another car, and hopefully it's a Maserati this time rather than a Volkswagen Bug or something, whatever. And so
Yeah.
but so it can be it's a continuum of learning and development and growth and understanding ourselves and developing into who we really are. Does that make sense, astrologically speaking?
Yeah. And to spin off that a little bit, even to include what John Edward does, is also, I believe, as an astrologer, and I look at certain things in people's charts. So when I do their chart, I talk about something. But in astrology, the way I look at it and the way I studied it from different teachers and stuff too, is if you were to leave this earthly plane through an act of suicide, because suicide is, there's a lot to it. I was suicidal many years ago, so I can understand some certain things about it. But your soul doesn't evolve. Like some people agree, like me, that your soul doesn't evolve through an act of suicide. Like you still come back. Like your soul still has to come here and grow. So it's not a free pass. It's not a hall pass, right? So that's why even people listening to John Edward, what he talked about in one of his books years ago, and I loved it. I can't remember. It wasn't one of his most popular books. It was in the beginning. But I remember the big message that he had in that book. And basically he was saying is that because we don't do the work as humans in our own important relationships and to work on healing the trauma in our relationships and love and practicing forgiveness, that's why people like him, the psychic mediums, are busy, because those words aren't spoken while you're alive, right? And
Mhm.
so when you hear messages from people like who are psychic mediums, from John Edwards or people like that, I always tend to hear those same messages of like, they're sorry, they're still evolving, they're growing, and it had nothing to do with the people that were alive. It was that person's choice to, to leave through an act of suicide. So it's kind of like a side thing, but it's also connected. Like, because I just don't believe that we are just physical beings, like the world that we cannot see, like our spiritual realm and our emotional realm and our mental realm. They're layers of us that many healers can tap into, and to use that to help us understand why we're here. We're not just physical.
Can I tell you a quick story about John Edward?
Yeah.
There's just real quick, because there are people who will tell you. I had was having a conversation with a scientific gal, and she's very left brain, very, very, this is the way it is, and so forth. And she was saying that no, John Edward, what he does is not real, and that it is all a bag of tricks, and it is a body language reading, and it's looking at their Facebook page and all this kind of stuff. So I had John Edward on my show. Now, John Edward does a billion shows. So
Yeah.
he's got it down. He shows up right when he's supposed to at the top of the hour. He leaves right when he's supposed to at the top of the next hour. And there's no time, no room for any kind of discussion. So I don't have a chance to talk to him or tell him anything. He doesn't know anything. So he was in New York. I was in Seattle. And because I didn't know if I would get folks lined up to talk to him, I lined up people to talk to him, even though
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to. He says he doesn't like
Yeah.
that, but I did it to make sure that I had people talking to him. The first one was my sister, and I had her talk to him because I knew her story, and I didn't say a word. He did not know she was my sister. We had nothing like that ever, and that happened. So during the course of the reading, he told her how her father died, how her grandfather died, the other grandfather died, and also that May was an important month, happens to be your birthday and her two grandchildren's birthdays in that month, and Mother's Day and all that stuff, and that the letter R was important. And there was a bunch of other stuff, but those are the ones that stuck in my mind. And the letter R, well, I have a brother, his name is Randy, and she forgot that her husband's name is Roger. And so everything that he did was absolutely spot on. And there is not a prayer in the world that he knew ahead of time that it was my sister and that I knew what he was saying to her was true. So when people say, nah, it's a bunch of hooey, I guarantee you it is not hooey. It's energy, and it is he is receptive to the energy that comes from the other side, and that's the way that works. So I had to tell that story because there are people to this day who thinks it's a bunch of hooey.
There's non-believers, and we need the non-believers because that just gives us the passion to like spread more of the woo, So and I have personally been with how many different psychic mediums? 2 or 3. And most recently, like 2 months ago, because we're talking May here now. So I'm going to say it was February-ish, February, March, April. So yeah, 2 to 3 months ago. And same thing. Like, actually, I'll backtrack a little bit and share another story for the listeners too.
Well, hold on just a second. I need to take a break, and we're going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to come back so that you can tell your story. And we're talking again with
Tammeron.
I knew that. We'll be right back.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. I hope that woke everybody up because this is an important discussion we are having
about woo
with Tammeron and yes. And so you were going to tell us a story. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a validating story. And at the end, Kevin, I'm going to validate this in my own astrological birth chart. Okay.
Perfect.
So we were talking about psychic medium. So for me, way back in 1999, when I was suicidal after my father passed away, it was a very traumatic experience for me. And it wasn't just because my father had died, but it was, my mother is still living. So it was my first parent that had passed. And when we lose our parents, it is traumatic, whether we're connected or not. Like, our parents are a part of us, right? So it does affect us in some way. But there was other things happening in my life at that time. And so when my dad died, I couldn't stop crying. And I wound up sitting in a counselor's office, and she had asked me some questions, and she asked me some things about my dad. And she goes, honey, you're not here because your dad has passed. Like, you're actually at peace with where he's at now. She said, but I want you to uncover why you're here, because this is for you. So she gave me some homework. She gave me some books to read, and she asked me some important questions. And I walked away thinking, how come this person is not telling me what to do? Because I thought that's what counseling was. And she said, that's not my job. And that's a good counselor. No one should ever tell you what to do, even an astrologer or a healer, whatever. You need to learn things about yourself and figure things out. But what was happening was that I realized that the fairy tale life of living, getting married, having kids, doing what I was told, like getting it, like that whole thing, it wasn't working for me. And I was very unhappy. And there were some things happening in my life where I didn't understand that it was my intuition connecting, like I was tapping into my intuition, but I didn't know what that was. Okay. And so through working with her, I was able to begin that healing process. And that's also what opened the door for me into holistic wellness, because I was allergic to a lot of the meds my doctor was giving me. And so I couldn't take them. So I had a lot of things going on. So we're talking like 30 years ago. But interestingly enough, a couple of months later, I met a woman who was a psychic medium. And I didn't know what that was. I'd never met someone who could be like John Edwards, like talk to people that had passed on, give you messages, channel information, blah, blah, blah. And she didn't tell me at the time that's what she was, but she recommended that I go see someone who she knew very well was a psychic medium. And you had to wait months to get in to see this guy. But luckily for me, somebody had canceled. And so when I booked it, I literally got in a week later. And it was during that session, sitting there, feeling so small, dealing with issues of betrayal, feeling broken and wounded and weak, and didn't understand who I was and why I was here on the planet and why these horrible things had happened to me, because it wasn't just that. It was because of the message that a psychic medium said to me, you will recover from this. And just want to let you know that we understand that you are genuinely suicidal and you are not reaching out for help. And that is what suicide is. It's when you hold it in and you feel like your problems are so big that nobody would understand and you're not reaching out. That's what suicide is. And so he said to me, don't do it. And I was like, what is going on? I was looking around in the room and like feeling the small going, I don't even understand this. But luckily it was recorded. And I have to say that man changed my life. That psychic medium gave me messages that day that gave me a sense of hope, that helped me to understand that everything I was going through, I would recover from someday. And he even said to me, and you will empower many people. But I didn't know what that was. And so that's when the journey really began for me. Now, I'm going to close this off. Ironically, once I became a certified astrologer, we were trained to look for specific dates and times in our soul's journey as you learn how to study your chart and how the planets move and how you can predict or validate specific things. That when my father passed, in my chart, that was considered my time for me for a spiritual awakening, because it involved some very specific planets, and it was literally lined up to the day my father passed. That is stuff you cannot make up. I'm sorry.
I'm even if you have a vivid imagination and you can't make that up.
You can't make that up,
because
right?
people wouldn't buy it. But
No.
and by the way, I want to do this before we continue. If you are listening to this program now or in the future, and you are feeling, as Tammeron said, you're feeling alone, you're feeling hopeless, empty,
scared,
there's a number I want you to call. It's
Yeah.
988 in the United States. It's a brand new number to help people that are in that place to get the help that they need, because I'm
the example of it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to carry on to that story a little bit, I got a call 2 weeks ago from the medical examiner in San Diego, California. And they said, are you Travis's father? And I said, yes. And do you know Stacy Haynes? And I said, yes, she was his girlfriend for a period of time. And she said, well, we're looking for the next of kin for her, because she just jumped off of a 6-story building and killed herself. And that life had so much promise.
Yes.
She had so much ability but she needed so much help.
Yes. And I needed the help too, Kevin. And all it is exactly that, sticking your hand up. And I mean that metaphorically, just to reach out. The correct help is out there for you. And there are different ways of getting help, and you will need someone to talk to. But There are people that understand what you're going through, and it is a journey, but just take that first step and understand that you matter, and that every single person on this planet, your life matters now, because when you get to the other side of any trauma that you're going through or any type of crisis, your energy vibration raises the collective consciousness on the planet. And so that's another reason why many of us who are healers or storytellers, and we're out here sharing our stories, and we're hearing things even with celebrities, and more people have podcasts that you can listen to. It's to help us all evolve and to come together to support each other. This is what the age of Aquarius is all about. And, we are in the age of Aquarius, and it really is about the collective and the community. And it is, I believe, as an astrologer, that's how we're going to get over what we're seeing that's happening in the planet now, where the people, literally everyday people, are going to come to help each other and to get through it. So yeah, reach out.
And I would like to just say one thing about you. You went through a dark time. My brother-in-law went through a equally dark time. He lost his wife and yada, yada, yada. And, he made the opposite decision. And so he took his life. Think of the number of people who you have helped between then and now to make a difference in the world. He missed the opportunity. He'll get it again, but he missed the opportunity to do that in this lifetime. And, and we all need to reconsider that, because we're all valuable. In my opening, I say we are all born great. And we are. And it's important for us to all recognize that. So I want to thank you for that. And it's very, very important that we have that discussion right there, because it's going to quite literally, it might save somebody's life, quite literally.
Absolutely. And I'll say one more thing too, because this is a very different way of looking at something, but I've said this to so many people, and it shows up over and over in my life. And this is, it's changing the way we think about asking for help. And I just want to say that we need to break the mold about asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Yes.
Turn that off. Asking for help is when love comes into your life. I'm going to say that again. When someone supports you, you feel validated, you feel like you matter, and you feel loved. It doesn't matter who it's coming from, because all of a sudden your energy shifts, and that is the collective raising of the consciousness of the planet. So when you are being helped, you are evolving.
It's also not a thing of weakness. It's your
superpower. It is how we are going to grow. This is the age of Aquarius. This is how we're going to get through this.
And speaking of which, we need to take a station break, which is their superpower. But we're talking with Tammeron, and we will be right back. She's an astrologer, and we're going to talk more about that. It's really an interesting conversation. Thank you.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Tammeron is with us, and she is an extraordinary human being. And she's got something that she's going to be able to give us oh, dare I say it, free before we finish this. So we're going to make sure that we have time for that. But we are talking to her about astrology and about life and death, and the one thing that your work is that I know you're very passionate about is helping, especially women who
Yeah.
have gone through some really, really difficult times, mostly caused, well, I can't say that. Are they mostly caused by men, or are they just caused by everybody?
No, no. Nowadays, it isn't about men. It is really, and to be specific, you're on it, Kevin. I'm very passionate again because it is the pattern of things that happened in my relationship. So they were showing up all over in different types of relationships. Is that I'm really passionate about empowering women to recover from an act of betrayal. And I have a very special 5-step recovery process that involves astrology, and it involves learning how to use some of these holistic remedies, because all of that information is in your astrological birth chart. So it helps you so that, you gain your confidence back. You feel like you've got your power back. You're not a victim. And even if they're feeling overwhelmed and powerless in the beginning, that's where I want to catch you. So it's about, after you've recognized that you've been in a relationship where you've felt betrayed, and that can happen in a business relationship. Like, that's happened to me a few times. And that's why I was saying, why does this keep happening to me? It happened in my teens. It happened in my 20s. I was like, what's going on? And so my purpose in my lifetime was to overcome feelings of not being a victim, was to find my power. And so that's why, for me, I kept repeating those patterns, because I didn't realize my power was the fact that I bounced back, that person or that situation didn't take me out. It taught me how to be resilient, and it brought out my strengths as a person, because I was never wanting to talk negatively, even though we have to go through the anger and all that. That's part of our process, but it's about understanding that there's a part of you that needs to grow and to heal. And so that's where there's more of this spiritual component to it, where it's how we take the steps to recover that has nothing to do with the other person, that helps you evolve and to become stronger. And that pushes you into more of your destiny, things that later in life where you're going to feel very comfortable doing that type of work, because you realize that that's where you need it to go. And sometimes that might even feel like that name of that book, like The Road Less Traveled. Like, I can even look at someone's chart and go, your chart's telling me you'd be much more fulfilled and happier if you were to step into this. And people go, yeah, I go, because it's not about the money.
No.
It's about happiness. And when we're making decisions that make us happier, when we wake up and we feel happy and we love what we do, and, like me, I get excited, talking about astrology, I get excited when I get to study someone's chart. I get excited when I share a story. That's how I know. My kids say I'm vibing. And when you're vibing, things just line up in your life. Things just literally happen. And so that is the passion of understanding that. So everything that happens has meaning, but let's give you that perspective. And that's what an astrologer can do, is give you that higher perspective and help it make sense. So you're not in the story. We're looking at the story of your life. We're reading it, right?
I got a question for you.
Go ahead, Kevin, you can ask it.
and that is this. I have always been the way I am, and that's why Positive Talk exists. I have a positive attitude. I like people. I like to be kind to people. I like to give people the thought that they're going to be good, and everything that we're going to talk about is going to work out just fine, and that it's all being put together by the universe. And you know what? Sometimes it just ain't that way. And there are people that work to take advantage of you. And there are others that I know in my life that because of that, they shut down. I refuse to shut down and say, everybody's full of crap and nobody likes it and everything. I refuse to do that. But how do you separate from those people that are intentionally working to hurt you but for their own nefarious purposes, and continue to have an open heart?
Well, Kevin, I actually love that question. And this is my answer based on the wisdom of being 60. Okay. There are always going to be haters. And as Tony Robbins says, whether you love Tony Robbins or you don't, he still has great wisdom and great things that have made me think and make me recognize that you always have to remember when you are doing good in the world. And Kevin, if you love what you do, people are going to feel it. And he explained it like this. It's like going outside at night and turning on the light. If you are a light worker, if you do what you love to do, you are a bright light. And the minute you turn on the light, what happens? Zing, ding, ding.
You're attracted to bugs are attracted to
You're
you.
going to attract haters. It's just the law of nature, and everything is based on nature. So when you look at that and go, you can do one of two things. You can go, oh my God, it's happening again. Why is this happening? And, and let it weigh you down. Or you can look at that and go, oh, wait a minute. I'm making a difference and I'm going to shine brighter. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, because you can energetically, this is the woo-woo word, because I have done a lot of energy work. You can send that negativity back to someone. You can basically I do it like this. And I'll physically show it and talk you through it. I literally say, I'm cutting off that negativity so that it does not affect me with no harm to anyone. Meaning I don't necessarily send it back to that person, but it's like a shield. It's like, you're gonna just give it back to the universe and let it dissolve, because we do energetically have to protect ourselves, because this is the realm that we talk about even in astrology. And as a healer, I learned it this way. There's 4 bodies. Okay, so healers, yoga, people talk about this. We have the physical body, which is the body we can see. It's the only body we can see. We have the mental body, which is our mental. It's the positive talk. It's what you talk about. It's what the mind says over and over. I want to spread goodness. I want to spread light. I want to have my talk show. But we have the emotional body, and that's our feelings. And in astrology, that's our moon sign. So it's the world we cannot see. And that's why I'm passionate about talking about our emotional body, because even though you're going through a crisis or challenging time, you can alter what you are feeling. And each week I do a video and I predict, based on what's happening in the astrological sky, based on what the planets are doing that represents certain things, especially where the moon is, because the moon represents our emotions, our feelings, our subconscious. I can predict how you might be feeling today. And if you're feeling off or negative, then I recommend something, an herb or a food ingredient that rebalances that emotion that people could be experiencing. So even for this week, my post go out on Thursdays. We're talking live on Thursday. I talk about lemon, using lemon and orange, because you need to rebalance. So for anyone understanding, it's not just thinking positive. That doesn't get you anywhere. It's about feeling positive. And that is the difference. So that's why you see people like Tony Robbins, people like all the big guys, that are out there. If you go to any of their live events, they're helping you shift your emotional body. A lot of people do emotional freedom technique, the tapping, whatever. That's hitting your emotional body, which means you can be going through a crisis or trauma or chaos or an experience and still have a good day.
Yeah.
You can still have a good day.
You have to.
Because you can't let that overtake you.
It's one of the things that I say when somebody says, well, have a good day. And I say, I have to. And people don't get what I mean by that. But it's like, it's a rule. I have to have a good day because that's who I am. And by the way, if somebody wants to be a butthead in my life, that has nothing to do with me.
That's right. They're just a butthead. Go let them be a butthead, because when they think they've got you, they have the power. When they can't get to you, turn up your power, turn up your light.
So never give them the power, because it's their issue about being a butthead. And
Yeah.
you've done if you are offering people wonderful things and then they try and take advantage of it, that's their deal. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with you.
Yeah. And part of that too, though, is kind of like what my thing was that I had to start trusting my intuition about that.
Yes.
Because sometimes we take it upon ourselves and think, A, we did something wrong, or B, we did something to deserve it. And when you turn that off and go, you did nothing to deserve it, you don't, whatever, that's when you get your power back and go, like you said, Kevin, what you just did has nothing to do with me. So even for women who are recovering from an act of betrayal, that's the first thing I talk about in the free guidebook that people can get is I talk about 3 myths that we're going to blast. Like, you did nothing to deserve this, and you did nothing wrong. Someone else's behavior has nothing to do with you.
And this is the point where I would say if you feel like that it is your fault, or you feel like you're responsible in some way because of a story that somebody told you from your past or your parents or your teacher or whatever it is, that's when I encourage you to get help with somebody
Yes.
who
Because
can
that's
help
the
you
healing.
see that it's not you and that you need to drop that story because that story is something that you just made up.
Yeah. And that's the victim story,
Yeah.
and sometimes we do fall into the victim. So it's okay to have the pity party, but you got to get out of it. Right. And that's also, like, ironically, and this is so ironic that I can't even make this stuff up, Kevin. And we got to talk about this too before we get to the end here, is that even in astrology, like I was saying, I can predict how people might be feeling. So even today, as we record this on the 16th of May, the moon is in the sign of Virgo. And I know you're a Virgo. And Virgos feel like we have to have practicality, like we have to get things done. Like it's a day where you just feel like you got to get up and clean, or you got to organize, or you just, it's about having that strategy. And ironically as well, the story in the video that I talked about this week, and my videos are like for the week long, Thursday to Thursday, is I've been talking a lot about the month of May, how Jupiter is very active in the astrological sky. And like I said earlier, Jupiter represents our spirituality, our opportunities, how we express joy and hope in our love. It's a very spiritual, jovial energy. And a lot of planets are crossing over Jupiter, and Jupiter is hitting and crossing over the Palladian galaxy, which is at the tail end of the Taurus astrological sign. So there's all these planets that are moving across the astrological sign of Taurus. And Taurus represents our money values. It represents our food and earthly things and earth elements and that kind of stuff. But because Jupiter is crossing over this Palladian galaxy that's deep in the sky, many people know the Palladian galaxy because if you ever studied Greek mythology, and I'm going to show a picture of it, it's the 7 sisters. So in Greek mythology, the 7 sisters were called the Weeping Sisters. And so a lot of people and clients are coming up to me and saying, I don't know why I feel so sad. I don't know. And what I've been explaining is that if my finger was the planet Jupiter, Jupiter is crossing over the Palladian galaxy, and the 7 sisters were weeping because they were falsely accused of betrayal by their husbands in Greek mythology, and they became the star cluster. And so whenever planets cross over certain things in astrology, as above, so below, we feel it on the planet. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this sadness, because even the planet Jupiter, even some of these star clusters represent war and a lot of negative things. And so there's this heaviness that people are feeling. And that's why I say, even though these things are happening on the planet, the truth has to come out before we can make change, before we can say, we don't want this as our leader. We don't want this to happen. If we don't want war, what are we going to do to change it? Sometimes we have to see the truth so that we can say, now what are we going to do about it? But what I also say to people is that if you're feeling that sense of sadness and feeling like there's no hope for the future, that's where you want to work on your emotional body, not the mental body, the emotions, and use things, even holistic remedies that can help you feel better so that you can still get through the day. Does that make sense?
It,
Because
it
that's what's happening right now.
it does indeed, but thank goodness that we don't have any war or hunger or
No.
people getting sick and dying. I'm so glad that we're all. I'm just kidding. We This is a perfect time for all of that to be happening because it is so icky. I think
It needs to change.
it
And that's
does.
what we're seeing.
Yes.
You can't do this and say, oh, and it begins in your home. Like, you can't solve the other world if you're not that person that's, whatever, out to solve other people's problems, or you're out in these areas. Start with your own relationship. Start with the people you care about. Like John Edwards says, start with your own family so you don't have to hire him to give you the messages. Someone said, need to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I had some bad behavior there, right? Like, do the work
Exactly.
now.
And that's why I end every show. And people may think it's just a slogan that I made up, but I end every show with be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. And I mean that sincerely, because we have to learn how to be kind to each other. Doesn't matter who we love, what we look like, and any of that. We are all one, and we need to appreciate each other. And by the way, we're talking with Tammeron. You are just sensational, young lady. When we come back, we're going to make sure that we get all our information out. So grab a pen and a piece of paper so that you can get all the information about the free offering that she has, as well as her websites, how to contact her, all that happy stuff. So we'll be right back. Right. It's just a 30-second thing. Be quiet.
We can do it, Kevin.
Yeah, you have time now to get your paper and pencil. Be right back.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Tammeron Karaim. Is that right?
You got it.
Hey, yay! She's with us. She is an extraordinary astronomer. Or it's not astronomer, astrologer. Excuse me. And she's also a coach, and she helps people get through some of the not so great parts of our life, which we have. I call it our bad country music song period, where you can have somebody get through
some of that hurting music.
Some of that. My dad died, my dog died, my wife left, I lost my house, all that stuff. And so if somebody wants to reach you, if somebody wants you to read for them, if somebody wants to work with you, how do they go about getting all that done?
Oh, thank you, Kevin. So yes, I don't have a public website because I honestly believe these days we don't need one. So for me, the best way to see what I do, see my weekly videos, find ways to connect with me is to go to my YouTube channel, which is called Inner Lights Academy TV. And each week I make a playlist called Your Time Matters. And that's where I talk about what's happening in the astrological sky, what remedies I'm going to suggest for you so you can help to stay emotionally balanced. And I always give you a little step of something to do so to keep your momentum, to keep you unstuck. And in that, also down below each week's description is other ways you can connect with me, whether you want a private consultation, an astrology consultation, where we look at your purpose and we can do a virtual reading and you get the recording. So you've got my direct email information on there. I'm not going to say it and spell it because it's just too long, but it's at the bottom of all those weekly descriptions. And also for everybody listening today, if you are a woman and you are in the recovery process of acting or recovering from an act of betrayal, whether that happened in your personal life or even in your business, I have a free digital guidebook for all of you. And it has all kinds of great information in there for you, how you can get started, how you're going to blast through some of those myths. I have additional information in there for you and other ways we can follow up and contact me if you want to work with me in a coaching program, whether privately or in small groups. I also do private retreats at certain times of the year. And that is going to be in this link. So this is where I'm going to read it out because it's https:// So it's bit.ly/relationship rescue recovery. So that is the direct link for the free guidebook. And there's all kinds of great information in there for you.
And if you want to email us at kevin@kmmedia.com or kmmedia.pro, we'll get that for you if you couldn't write it down that fast. Because this is important. This is important information, and this is life-changing information.
Absolutely, because you do matter. And like both Kevin and I talked about today, if you are going through a tough time, you're going to have wings because of it. And even in astrology, when I see what your stories are going to be, your patterns. And that's what I would say to someone, there's going to be a gift in there for you, but unfortunately you have to go through that, but you never, ever have to go through anything alone.
The experience that we have, I believe, in our life makes us who we are today and leads us to who we're going to be tomorrow. But sometimes you need help understanding what those experiences actually mean and getting through them. So that's why someone like you is very valuable. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, especially, I've been talking lately about the issues that women have that didn't even cross my mind that was even a thing. But as an example, I have never in my life, and I mean this sincerely, ever in my life parked my car and was concerned about the lighting of where I parked my car and that it was well lit for later on when I would come back to it. I've never had to take my keys out of my hand and hold it there to make sure I could get in my car right away and lock the door because you don't know who's out there. And it never even crossed my mind, but you guys live with that every day.
Yeah, we do. And the Dalai Lama predicted that women were going to be the change makers and the light keepers on the planet. And you have to look at it as we've become resilient to be those leaders. But leadership is not something you get from a textbook. Leadership is something that you become a leader based on the behavior and the way you've responded and become resilient to the challenges that you have overcome. It's not a given. Leadership is not given. And so, I think, and this is just my take as a woman, women look at problems differently. We look at how we want to get solutions differently. And it's not saying the way men do things are bad. It's just that we're very different. And even in astrology, there is a strong signature that women really are peacekeepers. We want to get the problem resolved at the table so it never ends up in an argument or a fight. It's it's like the old thing, sit down at the table and work it out.
Exactly. You're going to have to come back, and then I promised you that you can read my chart, and
I'd love to.
We can pretend like it's it's not pretend, it's a real reading, and I'll be sitting here in my underwear, and we'll just kind of open book me and all that kind of stuff. So
and I'll probably be in my underwear too, Kevin. What makes you think I won't? And what makes you think I'm not in my underwear right now?
I couldn't. And by the way, so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's been a blast.
It has been. And your name again for everybody? Tammeron, and go to her YouTube page again, which is.
My YouTube channel is Inner Lights Academy TV. And if you guys are watching this as a video, look at that. Inner Lights all my clients get a journaling workbook, and look at that. It has a Pleiadian galaxy in the background. I wonder why. I wonder why the weeping sisters were weeping and from an act of betrayal. Isn't that ironic how that happened in my life and I didn't even know it?
That's so cool.
I don't know. I
Thank
don't know
you.
how this stuff happens.
They're going to make me go away now, but I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.